Nothing gives me more pride in this life than ending a meeting early.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Colbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier.
Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Colbert. Today's guest is a strategic facilities and operations executive with 18 years of experience leading complex laboratory and office build-outs, multi-site operations, and enterprise-wide safety programs within the life sciences sector. Throughout his career, he has delivered high-impact infrastructure projects ahead of schedule and under budget, while aligning facilities strategy with scientific innovation and long-term business growth. Known as a trusted partner to executive leadership, he brings deep expertise in MEP planning, EH&S compliance, vendor management, and global logistics, along with a talent for building high-performing cross-functional teams. He is the Director of Facilities and Laboratory Operations at Korro Bio, Inc. Robert Mack, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Bob. Really appreciate you investing your time. I know today's probably a crazy day, as many are, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, always is. Snow didn't help, but yeah, we're able to make it happen. So happy to be here.
We'll jump right into it then. So given your 18 years of experience, primarily in life sciences, build-outs, infrastructure, what's been your biggest lesson learned?
I think the biggest lesson learned right off the bat, if you're starting out in facilities, is to and it's a weird way of putting it, but never say no. You can kind of lead a lot of different ways of getting into facilities. And when you start out, you're probably not going to know a lot of it, but you can learn really quickly and on the fly if you have the right management in front of you and guys to be able to teach you. So when you're first starting out, I would never put that it isn't in my scope or it is in my job, because I think facilities is the one job where it's kind of changing and you're really more of a problem solver than anything else. So I think that coming in with that mindset that we're just going to figure it out and get it done as a team. It doesn't mean it has to be by you, but it means that you're going to learn the ways of kind of going around, working with different departments, whether it be the executive team, finance, IT, and then just, circling the horses around and making sure that you're finding different ways to get through that project. I think that's the biggest thing. The lessons learned from there is then you got to build yourself up. And I think that's going through what you get for training and going through those different routes and making sure that you become indispensable to your team because you hold those certifications that not a lot of other people have.
Great stuff. I want to back up to never say no.
Yeah.
In my experience, people sometimes will say no because they're either afraid that they can't do something, or like, what have you seen in terms of like real life application of that mantra, if you will, right? And what holds people back if it does?
Yeah. So I see a lot of people when they're starting out, and I would be lying if I said I wasn't guilty of it too. When you're starting out and you're paid for a certain role, maybe you're just a lab ops person. So you're just going in and you're changing tanks and you're taking care of waste and you're doing those kind of things. But other stuff's going to come out in the office. Maybe they're going to restructure. They had a bunch of new hires and they need someone to do the onboarding for that, or changing desk assignments and moving those things around. And yeah, sure, you can make the case that maybe HR should be doing that, or an office manager. But the more you start taking on those roles and learning them on the fly, I think you're just making yourself more invaluable. I mean, I've even learned that small things go a long way, like being part of the culture committees here and just learning how that is. And then you're interacting, which gives you more insight into the scientists you're working with anyways, which is going to make you a better lab manager in general. The more you know how those people are thinking and how they go about their job and what they like outside of it even, I think you're going to go a long way with earning their trust, which is basically everything you're going to do in facilities, especially if you're on the safety side, which you should be, which I think we're going to talk about later. But I think that's a big thing is I think you got to earn that trust, and trust is earned. And I think the more you can show that you can fill the gaps and you're not just there to fill your role, you're there to solve problems, I think is the biggest thing with being in facilities.
I love the all-inclusive approach. And you said the culture committees too, like really understanding the business, how it ticks. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of just a lot from that, because you're not going to be directly in on how they're hiring or anything like that. But from the culture perspective, you can kind of get insight of the teams they're building and maybe why they were going around that way. And like I said, I think the bottom line is really when it comes down to, it's not just trust from the executive team. The biggest thing is going to be trust from those other people in the lab. Because if they don't trust you, or they think that you're, you could be someone who's just really reporting back to the executive team, you're not going to earn that trust, where, they're going to come to you first when there's an issue because they're going to be worried about who you're telling or whatever. And when you start establish yourself that, no, listen, I'm here for you, to protect you, to service you so you can do your job. I think it goes a long way across the board where you're trusted on both sides.
Outstanding. You mentioned safety. I'm going to kind of jump to that topic because you did. So like, I know we talked a little bit about how facilities and lab operations teams can protect themselves professionally. And I think that weaves right into the safety topic.
That's really kind of like if I was to, teach myself at 25 years old, now, go back 16 years and teach myself. I think the first thing you want to do is all the stuff we established, don't say no, be active in the lab, be active in the culture committees. But then eventually, if you want to move up and you want to be a director one day, or, even more than that, you got to figure out what are you bringing to the table that no one else is. And the gaps that I always see are OSHA certifications. So you can start really quickly. You can get it tomorrow. You can get your OSHA 10 and you get it. And you know what? There's probably a good chance in your company, you're the only one with OSHA training. So that immediately sets you apart, which gives you an opening right there to be the one that should be on all the permits, because someone's name's going to be all the permits. So that's a good way to be the trusted one to be all the permits. If the permit's in your name, all of a sudden you become incredibly important to the organization. But then take it further. OSHA 30, OSHA 132, OSHA 192. You start getting all of those. Now, if someone from OSHA comes on site, you might have as much or more training than they do, and you're separating yourself. So then you should be the head of the safety committee in lab ops, which is incredibly strategic and important role, because now you're running all the incident reports, all the accidents, anything that comes in with waste management. So you can get your RCRA license right there. And then you're the only one that can sign for waste. Then if you really want to start getting into it, make yourself even more, though your life will become more difficult. I will warn you before this one, but DOT and IATA. If you get that, then now you're the only one in the company that can do all the hazardous shit. And now you've separated yourself. Now you're not a lab ops guy. Now you're not the one, are you cleaning the kitchen or what? No, you're all of a sudden, you're the one that is going to make the company work. They can't ship without you. They can't get rid of the waste without you. They can't sign the permits without you. You become invaluable. So I think it's just like learning those things. And what's great with the DOT and IATA, you got to redo them every 2 years. It's annoying, but once you do it, you'll fly through it 2 years later. The OSHA ones don't go away. So once you get them, it's like having your college degree. You have that for the rest of your career. So if I was to go back and tell someone who was young, who's starting, it's like, go work for, Boston Lab Services, any kind of those operations, get your foot in the door, but then all of a sudden this is extending your window of how you get into these companies. Because eventually what you want to do is get out of them and get hired by one of these companies. Because what I'm seeing is that just like they did with IT, probably about 10, 15 years ago, they started outsourcing. So you have a director, you have a VP maybe, but then the rest of it is usually a third-party company that's coming in. And you see that with safety as well. They'll have a third-party company, but the way that you get to the next level is those third-party companies at the end of the day can't sign, and they can't do it on behalf of the company. So you need to be that person that can. That makes you, by default, at least a manager, if not higher. And I think that's the way that you can really structure and get on a quick path and learn those openings. Now, if you're really early on, too, the other thing is if you have a trade coming in, you're beyond everything else. I did not. So I did not have that kind of thing. It's not like I know HVAC systems or, I was a plumber or anything like that. I had, some from being a water and sewer employee for 9 months when there was no jobs. But other than that, I did not have the experience. If you had that before and then you're using these other building blocks, I think you can really separate yourself. I think there's a lot of money to be made there too.
I certainly hope that people starting out or even midway through are listening very intently right now, because it's a hell of a framework you just walked us through. I have some follow-up questions. Well, it's not a lot of certifications, but it's quite a few, right? So how would you what advice would you give people that say, all right, I want to do the waste management. I want to do OSHA. I want to do this. I want to do DOT. Like, is it internal? Do they do it on their own? What's your advice on that, Bob?
So if you're working for an organization, the DOT, IATA ones, they'll pay you to do it. At least any company I've been a part of, they'll pay for you because they need someone to be able to do it. So that the RCRA, they should be paying for those. The OSHA ones, a lot of them I think will. If you're not, you're really investing in yourself because those ones don't go away. So you're not just there for the term that you're with the company. They don't go away. So the way I would start would be the OSHA 10. That you can get done in a week. The OSHA 30, the way that I did it, they had one in Connecticut. I stayed, I think it was 1 week in Connecticut. And it was good because I got to meet other people and, get some insight of what other people were doing. And it was hands-on class. And, some of it was boring, I'm not going to lie, but there was a test at the end. It felt real. But after COVID now, you can do all these things online. That's the big thing that came in post-COVID is that everything's online. So you can take it at your own pace. For me, the company I was part of basically got bought out and then they had a slow letdown. So then at the end of it, it ended up just being me doing tours of the facility, which there was few and far between right when COVID was hitting. So I had all the time in the world where I just sat there and took all these classes to kind of beef up while I got ready for post-COVID life. Obviously, I hope that doesn't ever present its chance again. But that being said, these are things that it's also, there's no time limit on doing it. So you can kind of take it at your own pace. Each one has like something like 180 different classes that you're going to take. So just knock out, put a framework. Hey, I'm going to knock out 3 this week and just keep going. And each one sends you a separate certification. So you can keep showing to whoever's managing you that you're building your career on the fly and quickly.
Outstanding advice. It's fantastic. And good for you for leaning in on yourself too. Really. I
had no idea. I had a weird start to the career. Like I said, I was working for the water and sewer department. And then I was working for State Street Bank doing fund accounting. And that job just repeated every day. And some people love it. It just wasn't for me. And then I moved to auditing and that moved, that repeats every month. And I just couldn't stand it. So when I got into facilities and it was kind of just chaos and, you're a problem solver. I don't know why, but that's what really I enjoy waking up and just being born into chaos, which is probably great because I have twin girls now. But I think that once you kind of accept that and if that's what's really in for it, then I really just started, finding the gaps in companies. What do they not have that they're paying for? And a lot of that is on safety. A lot of that's on shipping. And I think if you can build that out, you can be a really valuable part of a company very quickly.
You also mentioned something about having a trade under your belt, right? Or the knowledge of one experience when you join is so much more powerful. Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, if I was someone hiring a entry-level employee, or let's say in the first 5 years of their career, if they could knock out a trade for me, say they were an electrician or they were a plumber, or in that, I don't even have to mean you're certified plumber, but you have some expertise there at all. You're just saving us money. I mean, that's one less contractor I got to bring on site. It's also going to be someone who's going to be able to call, hey, I just looked at that quote and, that seems like a lot of hours for what they're asking. I don't think we really need that. I think anytime you have more insight, I've been now doing it 17 years. I can see through it because I've had it, but I've had to run through so many bad plumbers, electricians, everything else to get to the ones that are now in my Rolodex. That I think having someone, if I was looking and I was trying to bring someone on board, if they could knock something out like that, I think it's huge. And I just think that there's less and less people in the trades now. I know there's been some push recently that there's some coming back, but overall, I mean, that's a lacking skill set that if you have it, I think that, I mean, then you're opening up to anything. You don't even have to do facilities. You could just be a plumber and make a ton of money. But I think the trades there is another big opening for a young person.
That's really good that you're sharing that. And it's also, just a little off topic, but a career that's a little hedge against some AI too, right? Yeah. I mean, they're going to need the manual labor in many cases. So
it's actually, it's really interesting that you bring up the AI thing because facilities has always been the weird thing right now where they keep asking us about AI. And I think it is actually useful. I think you can do it in a lot of different ways. Maybe you don't know how to address an executive team or maybe how exactly you would word a quote that needs to go through the legal process. And I think AI can really help. That being said, AI is not going to go in there and change the tank. AI is not going to be able to sign for waste. AI is not going to know a good bid from a bad wood overall in terms of, when you're really evaluating. They're also not going to really know a good company from a bad company other than what's online for rating. So I think that it is important, but I think that facilities and then going into the trades, I think you're 100% correct. I think it does protect you from what is eventually coming. That being said, if you want some tricks up your sleeves, like HTS codes, if you're dealing with DOT IATA, I would heavily start looking into AI. It will help. It'll make it a lot faster than when I used to have to Google it and piece it together, and it was a nightmare. You can do the things a lot quicker now.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So I know you've caught the show a couple of times, Bob, and I'm going to ask you one of my my staple questions here, and that is, what is the most difficult situation or challenge you and your team have faced, over the years?
I would say the number one was we took over a project at one point, and it was over budget when we got it. The previous regime was not there. We took over the project. It was a team of us. We had a good team. And divvying up tasks right away, that ended up having the project come in early and under budget. Now, that's a quick way in not really answering your question, but how did you do that? Well, first off, you got to work with your construction team. You got to work with your project managers that are running those construction teams. You got to work with your design team, and you got to get them all in the same room. They tend to operate in pods, and you can't do that when you're doing a large construction project.
I want to ask you about the pod thing. What do you mean they operate in pods?
A lot of times you'll have separate meetings for each one of those groups. You'll have a construction meeting, then you're going to go work with the design team, and then you end up having meetings about your meetings, and it drives me absolutely mental. Just stop. The less meetings you can possibly have, and I can't push this enough to anyone, is stop having meetings. Just if you're having a meeting that's more than 20 minutes, it better be a serious problem, because literally you can go in. Here's the 5 things that I need. Are all the people that I need to do this in the room? Well, they should be. If they aren't, this isn't the correct meeting. And I think that's the whole thing. So when you have a large construction project, they all should be in the room at the same time, because I'm not going to be able to answer, hey, is this column in the right place on the left-hand side of the lab in the chemistry section? Is that going to mess up an HVAC? I'm not going to be able to answer that. What I can tell them is that, hey, they're saying we got to move this. And then the question that you should immediately be asking goes, what does that cost? That's your part of it, making sure that because if not, they'll just run wild. And then the other thing is, if you're getting different answers and you're in different meetings, then you just have having 50 meetings and you're never going to get anything done, getting all the different checks and balances.
First off, I think you should be a consultant on what meetings should be had and what shouldn't. And I love what you said. If it's more than 20 minutes, this better be a big problem.
Nothing gives me more pride in this life than ending a meeting early. I never say you're giving your time back. I'm just like, welcome to my kind of meetings. Cause I'd rather not. The worst thing to go into a meeting is to go in and then talk for 20. It's like, I got 9 other things I need to get done right now. So let's hit the topics and go home,
Good stuff. So I started with what's the biggest challenge, and you shared. So what have you put in place to hedge against that occurrence in the future, or that happening to you and your team again?
Well, one is age and experience. And I hate saying that because I hated it when I was young, but as you start knowing your teams, you can trust them. You know the people that you should call. So once that Rolodex is kind of identified, you can start solving problems on the fly. I think the other thing is really just focusing and making sure that your internal team is correct. Who are you putting in? Because it's not just going to be facilities. It might be that you need an office manager because the kitchen's not going to build himself, and picking up furniture is not going to be my specialty. I think having those kind of people, having a person that's really going to know the lab ops and how the lab is operating, that doesn't have to be facilities. That could be the VP of chemistry, or maybe even a lower level person that's going to need to know, that hood placement isn't that great, or we're going to need tank holders over here, and making sure that they're all part of it. So I think it's just establishing a team quickly. And if you already have your safety committee and lab ops, I think that those teams come together a lot quicker, because that's a team you're going to rely on internally. Then your external team is going to be the ones from your Rolodex. And I think then once you have them, that's the only 2 that should be shepherded all the time. Do not put your lab ops team all the time in with your project team from the outside, because all of a sudden scientists are going to telling you every little thing that they think should go into it. You need to be the filter before it goes through, because what they want and what they need is 2 very separate things. They don't need everything. Yes. So if you look at a lab, the way I'd always say, you look at a lab and you turn it upside down. Whatever doesn't fall to the floor is the things you need to build first. Okay. Because that's your HVAC, that's your electrical, that's everything that's going to have to be. That's also the things that are going to cost the most money if you do change it later. So establish that. Everything else, like tank holders, tank placement, can all be done later, and it doesn't really matter that much. So don't get bogged down in the minutia of those other things. Get the base built. especially with, if you're having to deal with control rooms, waste rooms, where your service elevator is. Those are things that aren't going to change. So build around that. Start there and then build out.
Love I don't want to call it basic frameworks, but you're very clear in your delivery of your message. And how could you make it more clear if you had a visual? Turn the lab upside down. What fell off?
Yeah. What doesn't fall? Someone said that to me recently and I haven't been able to get it out of my head, and I love it. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, that's what I was trying to say the whole time.
So I know we talked a few weeks ago and you wanted to touch on the strategic side of facilities leadership, right? And expand on that however you wish, Bob.
The strategic part, I think it's really going to go back to a lot of what we've already said, though. It's like,
okay,
making sure that you're focused and aligning with your lab ops and safety team. Make sure that you're the head of those teams once you have established yourself. Don't do it too early. You don't want to be running something that you don't know. But once you get those OSHA certifications and stuff, those are the areas that you need to run. That shouldn't be run by any other group. That should not be run by a scientist. That needs to be run by someone who's overseeing the waste, the safety, the shipping, the chemicals, the incident reports, and then is dealing with the executive team outside of that, because that's where you need to filter the information of what they need to know that is going to change the company. So I think that's the important way to build yourself up. And the strategic part of it is, aligning yourself and then gaining the trust on both sides. That I'm the person for this. I'm the person that's going to give you the filtration to make sure that you're getting the information so that you can go do what you need to do. The same way in reverse, the executive team should come to you to tell you what they need from lab operations so that you can swing it down to them, budgets, all those kind of things, so that you're hitting the correct notes.
Hey, rock stars. If you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Colludus, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Colludus is there to make hard work easy. Visit colludus.com today to get started. Something that has not come up on the show, or at least in as much detail as you and I previously discussed, is the topic of the changing dynamics of the mass biotech market. I think you have a bit to say about that, and I'd really like you to expand because we only briefly touched on it together.
Yeah. So the whole thing's changed, and I think you've probably seen it all over the place. But just to take Cambridge as an example, right now Cambridge is 45% vacant. And that doesn't even expand apart the ones that are trying to sublease or do anything else. It's the whole market has shifted, which is going to mean more chances for things to change, and also it's going to be less chances for facility operators if there's less facilities being run. Obviously, some of it I would not be as alarmist as some are. Just because it's vacant doesn't mean it was ever used. They overbuilt. And that's the main thing that you got to see, is that a lot of these places have never been really used. So it's not really changing anything, but you are seeing a drawback. If you drive down the Mass Pike, you're going west, that was all supposed to be labs. You'll see vacant signs the whole way down, and it's all changed. And I think the first thing I said, I think if you talk to any landlord, I would think they would admit the mistake that they way overbuilt. They kept thinking this bio boom was going to go on forever. The warning signs were all there, but they didn't change it fast enough. And I think you're going to see a switch, and a lot of it won't affect facility managers. Well, I guess it could if you're running more like homes and stuff like that. But I think it has to go to, you have a big problem right now in Boston that you don't have affordable housing of any kind. So you don't have any affordable housing. So all your blue collar workers, or even myself, I don't live in Cambridge. I don't live anywhere around this area. And then it's going to take me an hour and a half to get to work. Taking that even a step further, go to your hospitals right now and ask your nurse where they live. I guarantee they tell you New Hampshire, Rhode Island, or South Shore, and South Shore, which means their commute is hell, which is not great for people who are working in a healthcare system. So I think you're going to see a big change, is that you need to see them switch to affordable housing. So whether that's done through state programs or how they're going to do that, it's going to be a massive change that you're going to see. But the second part, which I think is really interesting for facility people and people who want to do, what I'm doing, or even beyond that. And I think that's going to be manufacturing. So if you're looking at the rest of the country, you're seeing manufacturing attempted to be flooded back in. North Carolina's got a good stronghold on it. So does Indianapolis. And those are building. Massachusetts has to compete. So I would say Worcester, all the way up to Woburn, that whole west side of Massachusetts is going to need to switch to being heavy manufacturing. You can't do it in a dense city. You need, acreage and all that. And I think you're going to see a massive boom, because if you think managing a 50,000 square foot place is something, Well, what if it's 200,000 square feet? What if it is and I think that's going to open up a new pipeline to then fix what's going on with your issues with Cambridge and your Mass Pike pipeline there. You're always going to have your brains here because your universities are here. You're always going to want the name Cambridge on there because it sells and it sounds great. And so you have your public transit systems here. But what you don't need manufacturing anywhere near here, but it can be a pipeline. So your headquarters can say Cambridge, but where you're actually making the materials might be in Worcester. And I think I think it's a massive change that you're going to see. And I think you're starting to see it now. And I think, I hope Massachusetts is taking it seriously because I think that's going to be the future coming up.
It's a great rundown. Really good rundown. And like I said, that hasn't really been spoken directly about on the show. So I appreciate you bringing that forth for us, really, and talking about it. We may have already touched on enough of the project management and the challenges in facilities, but is there anything, did we touch on that the way you wanted to, Bob?
Yeah, I think so. I think the main part when I was thinking about this and I saw your show and wanted to be a part of it was just really like, hey, how would I help myself if I was, 15 years younger? And I think that the certification things, and if you really listen to that, beefing that up, I think is important. I think the never say no is incredibly important, especially when you're starting out. Now, I will say later, you're going to need to put up some walls or you'll just be running everything and then you're going to burn out and that nothing good is going to come from that. I think the other thing is then just making sure that you're part of the right committees and opening yourself up to seeing how the organization grows across. So it's not just that, it's business development, it's, IT and how they're doing it. Not that you're going to know IT, but you can be part of bringing in the people to get the IT stuff done. I think being close with HR, because eventually you're going to have incidents and incidents eventually you're going to go to HR. So you have to have a good relationship with them. I think it's just becoming a central structure that at the bottom line, the way I always pitch it to them and what I say in the safety meeting every year is that, listen, yes, I report to one person, but honestly, I report to all of you because at the end of the day, all you guys are eventually going to have your PhDs, your geniuses. And the one thing that I can do for you is take all the minutia, all the other stuff away so that you can focus on what you were hired to do, which is to save lives or make whatever you're going to make or develop whatever you're going to develop. And I think that's the main thing that you need to, if you're going to get into this line of work, that I think that it should be the way you're thinking about it.
I'm kind of smiling right now because, we never ever script or really practice out our show. And if we did, that would have been perfect because you just circled right back to your beginning there and it just wrapped it up.
That communication degree had to come in handy at some point.
So what do you love most about your job and why?
One, interacting with people who are way smarter than me. There's nothing I love more than being in a meeting and actually being important with people who have their PhDs and really, are going to do amazing things in their life. Second, I like the chaos. As much as, it can get and you'll complain about it. I think waking up every day and not knowing what's going to happen is one of the greatest things in life. I think that just kind of prepares you for everything that's going to happen outside of it anyway. So walking in and just going, how can I help? And just being that way, I think is a great way to go about it. And then, the next is it really teaches you how to think on your feet and think through problems. Now, it's really, really overwhelming in the beginning. I'm not going to lie. And you'll get into situations and things won't go well and you're going to have to deal with it. But also every time you fail like that, or every time a company doesn't do well and you're there and maybe you're there and you see them when they were growing and they went from 50 to 100 and then you saw them go from that to zero. Throughout my career, I've seen both ways, growing and going down. There's something there for facilities the entire way through where you're growing and you're building out a new office space and you're building a lab, ton of things to learn there. The other way, if you're going in reverse and you're selling equipment and you're winding down the space and you're doing tours about how to, maybe get rid of a space, or if it really winds down and you're ending it, decommissioning spaces, it's just so much to learn there that don't ever stop yourself from learning. It can be, a good learning experience. And once again, it makes you important because you could be the one turning the lights off. And that at the end of the day, I don't think you could ask for much more if you're the last one at your company. There's a reason for that. And I know it's not a great feeling, but there's a little bit of pride in that as well, is that, you saw it through the end. And I think that's something that a lot of facility could learn from.
Outstanding. You just said something about your degree, and I do want to touch on that quickly. I don't want maybe not too much time, but as much as you want, of course. Communications degree, not an engineering degree, not a facilities degree, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. And here you are doing what you do. Do you mind touching on that path a little bit and how you got here? I think it'd be helpful for people.
Yeah, sure. So, well, the first thing, that I'll say is for anyone that's in college or whatever you're doing, it might help. It very well probably won't. What my dad used to say is, get the piece of paper, stupid. It was like his way of saying it. Just graduate from college, get that part done. The rest of it you can kind of figure out. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I used to travel with the URI basketball team and do play-by-play. And did that, and then after found out that not a lot of money in that, and I wanted to have a family and have a different life than what that was going to give me. Graduated, didn't know what I was going to do during a horrible hiring freeze. So dug water and sewer for 9 months, which was a summer job I have. I was so lucky that they brought me back. But honestly, I learned more from that than a lot of other phases in my career. I used to have a person named Jerry Sharp, who was my person who oversaw everything I was doing, and him waking me up in the morning when I was 22 years old and making sure I was getting in the truck and going to work every day is basically the first thing. You got to show up. Right? That's the number one thing in the job. Yeah. You don't show up, you're not going to be trusted. All these other things, you get every certification you want. If they don't trust you, you're going to show up, you're not doing anything. And then, then I got a job and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something else, but I still didn't know. So then I got into fund accounting at State Street. And then it went to auditing at State Street. And it's weird as that is how much of it, I did not like it. I'm still doing it. It didn't matter. I still got to make budgets. I still got to talk to the finance team. You still got to know numbers. You got to know how to use Excel. And so all those things, they really kind of grow. And then if you don't like what you're doing, you do eventually have to make a jump. So at that point, I made a jump, ended up having it in through my father, worked with him who had done real estate and stuff. So I learned from him. I wasn't that into developing or real estate, but he was loosely tied into facilities. And I got in there. It happened to be right when they were going in to get all these safety certifications. And I just threw myself in. They had no reason to let me be involved in that, but actually seeing it through was huge. And then I got really into it. I'm like, okay, I saw how that went. And it was basically no different than auditing. It was just on the safety side. So then how do you build that? And that's when I started getting the OSHA certifications. Then that company wrapped up. So I went over to a battery manufacturer. I got there. I was there about 2 weeks and got called from the FAA. They had let their permits lapse. And basically we were sending bombs all over the planet because they're batteries that are, classified very highly. And which scared me, but then I learned everything about DOT and IATA and worked with the federal agent to develop exactly how they're shipping batteries that are now used by GM and Hyundai. And you start learning that. So you just don't know. That's why they never say no. It's just like, okay, that's the problem. How do I solve it? It's, whose fault is it? All that stuff kind of doesn't matter. And then I got here and there was a fantastic lab manager and she was fantastic. Learned a lot from her about how the labs operate. And we got to build this place together and now I know how lab operations work. So I just think that you have to be humble enough to know that you don't know something, but proactive enough to go learn it. Because you're not going to, you're never going to sit there and just absorb it from someone else. Eventually you're going to have to put the work in, but also just listening. And I think that really does those small things like being on culture committees and being part of as many programs as you can. You start learning from everything around you. And there's a lot of really smart people around you. So just listen. I think that's the main thing.
Thank you for that, Bob. And I love how you kind of walk us through your whole career because it's very interesting to hear how, at least what I heard, everything was complementing the next thing in some way, shape, or form. It was all working together.
Who would have known? If I try to explain it sometimes and they're like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't. But it also, if you look at it a little, 10,000 square feet, it eventually does,
Yeah,
so it's interesting.
Sure. So you just walked us through an absolute ton of knowledge, nuggets, and wisdom. Thank you very, very much. I just want to flip it a little bit. You mentioned twin daughters, and what is Bob doing when he's not doing all of this chaotic problem solving, right?
Well, because I just can't get enough of chaos. We have twin daughters. We went through a whole thing with that. We had one that had stomach surgery 5 days into life. And so I had my wife in one hospital with one daughter and then another in Mass General, dealing with that at the same time. So project management on both sides. She's fine now. Everything's great. But I think that's a lot of it. I think that's a great thing is that eventually when you fall into a career, and sometimes things sync together, it actually can go into your real life as well. It kind of gives you, hey, I just walk in expecting that everything's going to go crazy. And then you can kind of have that mindset of like, okay, I just got to pick up the pieces and fix it and try not to get too rattled. And I think that's kind of what it is now. So they're only 4. I got a long way to go. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when they're teenagers, but so far so good.
Sounds like you're pretty well prepared.
I
Sounds
hope
like
so.
you're doing a great job already.
I got a lot of gray hairs now. We'll see how long I can last.
Well, because of everything you shared and everyone listening, I'm sure people want to reach out. It happens quite often, thankfully. How would you want someone to reach out to you and how should they connect?
Sure. I would say the best way is through LinkedIn. Robert Mack, you'll see my face with I think I'm wearing a red sweater or something like that. It's probably the best way. Feel free to reach out. I'm pretty good. Life is busy, but I do like to get back to people and talk to other people in this field. So if you have any questions or you need someone to fix whatever, give me a call. I can give you, my expertise on what I do know and what I don't know.
Very generous of you to share your time, all your knowledge, and that offer right there, Bob. Thank you very, very much for being on the show. Thoroughly enjoyed this discussion with you.
Really appreciate it, Jay. Thank you.
Of course. And for everyone listening, thank you for your time and your investment in Facility Rockstars. You can find any of the shows at facilityrockstars.com, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch you next time.
It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.